that destroyed those cities. And that's what happened. In other words, the elders couldn't control the youngers. The youngers went ahead and started shooting the atomic weapons. And what they created, the great calamity, was that the fallout, the radiation fallout that drifted from the Sinai desert, where this happened, Sodom and Gomorrah in the Sinai, went northeast, and it wiped out Sumer. It wiped out everything in its path. The only thing that survived was Babylon. And they called that the Great Calamity because they had, in effect, cut their foot off.
And isn't there some evidence that shows that deep within the sands of the desert,
yes,
they find glass?
Glass, yeah, exactly. The remains of what we had it in our desert when we did our first atomic testing out in Nevada. We left glass all over the place there. It just crystallized as sand. And so the theory of the calamity is the story in the Bible. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, but the destruction was just like an atomic bomb.
What about the flood, the Great Flood?
Okay. I love the Great Flood. That's one of my favorite stories, and I'm just finished with my wife writing a screenplay based on Gilgamesh, and the flood story is in the 11th tablet of Gilgamesh.
Okay, all right.
And I...
of 12 tablets, right?
The 12 tablets, right. 12 tablets. So the 11th is the one in the British Museum, the one you always see, the kind of heart-shaped one, which has the story of the flood. And most people, when they discovered that story, they said, how could this be? This is before the Bible. And it's the same story. Anyhow, my belief is that we were left the story of Gilgamesh to teach us certain things, and we've written into the screenplay the story in its entirety, not entirety, but in maximum part of it, to be realistic. We hope it will open the gates. If we ever get this film produced,
the floodgates? The
floodgates will be open, George, because it tells the story of cloning. It tells the story of laser flying and the platform, the landing platform, rockets taking off.
And the flood was deliberate?
No,
the
flood happened. The flood happened, according to this story, by Nibiru came by at that time, and it pulled the Antarctic ice shelf.
Now, did this come by? Well, it must have been on one of its 3,600-year cycles.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I'm with you.
Okay.
And it just tore part of the planet apart.
It actually affected Nibiru, too.
Isn't Nibiru what some people have always claimed to call Planet X, that extra planet in the solar system?
Yeah, right. I've heard that.
Now, where do you think it could be now?
On its way back.
But whereabouts? I mean, how come we can't see it?
Well, it's pretty far away.
It's still out? I mean, the last time it came here must have been when?
Good question, George. Maybe the flood?
Well, let's see.
Do you know how long ago the flood was?
Flood was 5,000 years ago, I think.
I've heard 12. See, this is the problem. We haven't gotten good.
Well, if it's on a 3,600-year elliptical orbit, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we don't have a starting point from when the last time it was here, other than if we subtract 3,600 from 2008, for example, right?
Yes.
So it's about 1,600 BC, 2,000 BC, something like that. Maybe that's the last time it came by. Mm-hmm. That's on its it had to have, because I don't think from 1,600 BC to now, there are no records of another planet showing up, right?
Right, that's right.
Okay, so it had to have been a little before that, on its last trip in. So that means it could be getting pretty darn close now.
There are people that have written me, George, that say they've seen it. And I can't verify that.
Who are the people? Prominent people or just...
No. They're people who've read the book and who are trying to be helpful, and they have their own theories that it's this and that. And I've kind of dealt with what's here on Earth. I believe that the story is evidenced by the things that I've collected and pointed to in the book. And that's the way I want to leave it, because I think you can go off in all directions if you start pointing to Nibiru and saying this and saying that about it.
Why did they leave us genetically manipulated with this ability to hate and to keep wars and everything else, which
we
could be exactly like they were?
We are exactly like they are, George. And the two things that in the literature that you read all the translations, and I'm sure you've done this, they were big in two areas. They were big in sex and they were big in war. And I look at us and I see similar characteristics.
Yeah, that's true.
Of Homo sapiens. Why not? We inherited their genes. And
now, are any of them still here?
Possible. I don't know how.
They're probably the Illuminati.
Well, the sleeper cells. It's difficult to.
Well, I wouldn't say sleeper cells nowadays. Not those kind of sleeper cells.
Okay. Well, there are people who write me who say they are. And what am I going to say? Have you ever had that?
Oh, we get them calling here all the time.
Okay. So you know what I mean. I mean, you can't really prove anything.
Tell me about Adam the Missing Link. Where do you get it?
Okay, at my webpage. Currently, I'm working on other outlets soon, but right now the place is at www.adamthemissinglink.com. That's my homepage.
It is a remarkable book, remarkable theory. Now, did you come upon this prior to Sitchin's work, or did he influence you? What really got you going?
Okay. As I said, I started at Caltech wondering and searching and trying to find answers.
Always looking for the answers.
Always looking for the answers, George. And when I picked up his book, his first book, The 12th Planet.
12th Planet.
Let's see, was it 10 years ago? I said, no, that kind of makes sense. And my wife said, well, prove it. And I said, well, I can't prove it. And she said, well, write a book. I went on this research campaign to prove to myself that, there was validity to what Sitchin was saying. And what I found was all the proof, more proof than I could shake a stick at.
So you say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, Sitchin's work is probably pretty accurate.
Yes, sir.
Man, okay, I tell you what, we're going to keep you around for phone calls next hour. You ready for that?
I am ready.
We've got Marshall Clarfeld with us. His book, Adam the Missing Link, will open up the phone lines for you in just a moment. If you need to email me, that's very simple, too. That's George at coasttocoastam.com. Back in a moment with your calls on Coast to Coast AM.